So let's call this meeting to order at 7:12. A little late because of all the snow. We will start with any public comments and general announcements, either by members of the public, which I don't see any on the meeting, or commissioners.
There are two members of the public, Jason Starr and Reed Willis. Jason or
Oh,
Reed, feel free to, if you have a public comment this morning, feel free to send me a message in the chat.
Dave, we can't see anyone. We can only see Kim.
Yeah, that's right. That's another feature of the webinar
Oh,
status. So
okay.
you won't see people that, and that's the reason for the webinar status is if you won't see their screens. They won't have any ability to interact unless they're promoted to do so.
Okay, understood. Interesting. Okay, so just mental note for everyone, we could be being watched and we won't actually see if there's other participants. We've usually been able to see if there's other people joining. So, okay, good to know.
Yep, I can, and you can let me know. Since I'm running the meeting, I can keep you posted on all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Jason Starr and who else? Kit Reed?
Reed Willis.
Okay. Okay, great.
Also, if you in the future, if you're joining on the computer and you're promoted to a panelist, you'll be able to see all of those people. So Kim should be able to see the attendees, I think. Um,
Oh, I am not sure actually. Let me tell you. No, I think I just see the room
oh, okay,
and
interesting.
you.
Okay, I
Um,
guess as the host, that's slightly different. Okay, well, there you have it. That's good to know. So I'll keep you posted on any comments I receive from the attendees and how that works on a weekly basis. Jason and Reed, if you have any comments, I'd like to, yeah, as I mentioned, just send me a chat.
Okay, we will move on and welcome to Tim, our new commissioner, appointed right at the tail end of the year. We didn't have a meeting on the 19th, so
Right.
here we are, first meeting of the year. When a new member joins, we just quickly do some introductions. We start with the commissioners and then hear a little bit about yourself,
Okay.
why you wanted to join the commission and,
Yeah.
and the like. So I'll start. Dave Westman, I'm the current chair. We usually do about like a 2-year cycle of rotating chair positions. I'm on my second year, but I'm not counting. Uh, I am not a professional conservationist. My role is more in the energy and regulatory sector of Vermont. This is more back to my roots. I was a community organizer for the Sierra Club right out of college and a conservationist through my college degree program. So this is just a little bit more of getting back to my roots for that. But professionally, we've had some really interesting and wide experiences.
Yeah.
So and you'll hear that from some of the commissioners as well. So that's me in a nutshell at 7 a.m.
All right. Well, thank you.
It's as good as it's gonna get.
Okay, I'm Lynn Blevins. I'm an epidemiologist by profession. But I do manage woodlot in Northfield and just really enjoy environmental issues and volunteer in town on various projects, usually tree plantings and pollinator gardens and things like that.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
Hi, Tim. Reed Carr, lifelong Williston resident, except for my time away during college and starting a career in DC. My pertinent background for this work is I studied environmental chemistry, and I did the land stewardship internship at UVM, which is a conservation and ecology oriented internship, doing some things including trail planning and invasive species identification and things like that. So that got me into it. And since my career didn't end up going down an environmental route, this is part of what I do.
Got it.
To give back.
Yeah. Thank you, Reed.
Yeah, and I'm Laura Meyer. been in
Sure.
Williston about 30 years.
Wow.
And background in biology.
Yeah.
And I work heavily with the Vermont Master Naturalists.
Okay,
I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but.
not
I'll tell you
really,
about them
no,
later.
I have heard of it, but not
Interested. terribly
terribly familiar with it, yeah,
So, and I've been here about 5 years on the commission.
okay, thank you, Laura.
Go to Kim.
Hey Tim, I'm Kim Coleman. I'm like, my kids are not on the bus yet, so I think that they're outside. So I'm joining
Bus
from
watch.
bus watch. Yep, I'm joining from home this morning. I've been on the Conservation Commission, I think since 2016 when I moved to Williston. And I'm a faculty at the University of Vermont, and I direct UVM's Parks, Rec, and Tourism undergraduate degree program.
Thank you, Kim. And I'm Tim Ross, of course, and I've been in banking for 34 years now. Interestingly, I started out at the old Bank North Operations Center here in 1992, so quite a few changes since then. And
Wow.
so I worked for Bank North, which included the Howard Bank and so forth for 10 years, and then I went to Northfield for 15 and been at Union for 10 now. So my background is in I was the CFO for a while at Northfield, but it's primarily in commercial lending. So I do a lot of development type lending. Deal with most of the developers in this area in one form or the other. And the reason I was interested in this was because my wife and I are pretty outdoorsy. Not that we're out there every single day, certainly not in the past week or so. But when weather permits, we like to take advantage of all the resources here. We moved here 2 years ago and live in the village. We moved from central Vermont. Both of us are lifelong Vermonters, so Williston just has a fantastic infrastructure for between Catamount, walking trails and so forth. It's just something we'd like to see continue and thought that this might be a good fit. Hopefully have something to offer of value.
Well, we do have a treasurer position.
I was just saying, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but the person who you're replacing was our treasurer.
Okay.
So Reed's been sort of stepping in and happy to step out, I think.
Yeah, I kid, but no, it's good to have all the different diverse backgrounds.
Yeah.
And I didn't mention I've been around with the Conservation Commission since 2018. So Eric Howe is not on right now. Is our longest serving member right now, followed by Cam and myself.
Okay.
And then Laura joined after that, and then David, and then I think, and then
I think Eric's also on bus watch.
Eric, so
Yes.
Eric is here.
Oh.
Eric, you have to accept being promoted to a panelist in order to participate. I think Eric will be
great.
joining. Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah,
Eric,
well.
just to bring you on board, we've changed to a webinar format for all of the town Zoom meetings for additional protection from Zoom bombing.
That has been a problem with the Conservation Commission meetings.
And we thought, as I mentioned earlier to folks, we thought that the smaller profile meetings were exempt from that kind of issue, but the
Yep,
Catamount Forest received
Really?
some inappropriate
Jeez.
Zoom bombing.
Not great.
weeks ago.
It was not great.
Yeah.
Glasses.
Okay, well, here we
Right,
are.
yeah, Kim was there. So, anyways,
I almost want to ask. Can I ask what happened?
No, you don't. I'll
Okay,
tell you
all right.
another time.
Fair enough. Thanks. Eric, we're doing introductions, so we just heard a little bit of Tim's background. If you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Eric Howe. I've been a member of the Conservation Commission since I heard Reed's introduction, so since before Reed. How long has it been? 2010.
I want to say
I think.
I was gonna say like early 2010.
Wow.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, I've lived in Williston. We moved to Williston in 2009 and joined the Conservation Commission shortly after that. My background, I've been trying to turn my work background off, but my
Literally your background.
I live and work in water quality, primarily for Lake Champlain and lakes and rivers in the Lake Champlain watershed. Try to bring those interests and perspectives to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, well, nice to meet you, Eric.
Nice to meet you as well.
Eric, you should really tell your graphics department that you need a winter scene for your
My graphics department has been telling me to turn on my winter scene.
There you
That's
go.
funny.
My Zoom, I don't use Zoom very often. My team's background is at least fall.
There you go. Up to speed. Okay. Well, great.
It's too much fun.
Too much
Nice to
fun.
meet you, Tim.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And
you.
so we generally will meet the first and third Tuesdays. So mark those on your calendars.
The first and third Wednesdays.
First and third Wednesdays.
Yes,
Yeah.
Wednesdays.
I think Tuesday was on my mind because Reed and I were here late last night.
Got it.
And then we generally skip like the August. We do one meeting in August and one meeting in December.
Okay.
And we just kind of give ourselves a little
Yeah.
break. But there's going to be a sort of overview of one of the primary functions of this commission, which is to review applicants for the DRB process. That's really the most time sensitive part of this commission's work. And so that's the sort of need for the bi-weekly cadence. And
Right.
we do have some flexibility where if applicants goes down, we can sort of move the schedule around a little.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So let's move on to the minutes. And Dave, if you wouldn't mind doing a screen share so that we can review those minutes. I have one small correction. Right off the bat, which was the fiscal year 25 annual report. That was actually a project prepared by Reed and Eric. I ended up owning that email, that it was it was Reed and Eric who were presenting those 13 topics. Small point of correction.
Yeah, if you don't like them, it's.
And that was mostly Reed.
Okay. They're good topics, though.
It's okay, without
I'm
Eric,
not
I wouldn't have
taking,
done it.
yeah, I'm not taking just ownership of it. Just I'm trying to give credit where credit is due. Okay. Any other comments on the minutes?
I'm just checking one other thing here.
I should say, Tim, also, we operate by a very low-key Robert's rules.
Yeah.
So we do make motions, we approve those motions, but we generally don't do the overly complex version.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless we have a whole lot of public comment for some reason.
Unless we have, which I think that has come up.
Rarely do we have a lot
Rarely,
of
yeah.
stuff going on.
Okay, so if no one has any, people are still reading.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah.
I realized I scrolled rather quickly to the end. So, is there
I'm good.
any part that anyone would like to see who's viewing it in the room?
I think we're good, Dave.
I'm good, Dave.
Okay.
Thanks. I'll move approval of the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Reed and Laura. All those who were present and in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Okay, that's all of us with one
Yeah.
abstention.
Abstain, yeah.
Great. Minutes are approved, and we're on to our next agenda item. Thank you, Dave.
I'm gonna grab my tea real quick.
Great. Wow.
Okay. Now, conservation planner update. Dave, if you've if you've got the energy from the other side of the building.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, apologies on these a couple of the items on here since I was out yesterday. I was fully out. I wasn't able to prepare as well as I had hoped here. But just a couple of quick updates that I can mention. Um, let's see. Oh yeah. So the two things I put on this list were the commission had previously looked at the Lefebvre Lane beaver conflict question. There was a question from landowner about potentially deeding about 2 acres of wetland to the town on Lefebvre Lane. There was a question of recent beaver dam that was on site, and there was both the homeowner association at Lefebvre Lane and the landowner were in dialogue about what to do about that. I just wanted to provide an update that as the information I have is that, and Kim might be able to provide some updates, is that the landowner and the homeowners association have come to an agreement on how to proceed with that. The landowner was able to get in touch with the state Department of Fish and Wildlife for a consultation, and the recommendation was that the to avoid further potential damage to the road there, that the beavers be removed. So through trapping and dam removal. So that's my understanding of the development there. And Kim, if you know anything about sort of timeline on that, feel free to input, but you don't necessarily have to if you don't.
I actually don't. That all sounds right to me. And the HOA board member that I live with left, so I can't double check it.
Yeah, no worries at all. So in terms of the Conservation Commission question about, what to do about that land or whether that's still something, I'd say at this time, there's probably no further discussion about that unless, a member of the commission were to expressly be interested in kind of pursuing that acquisition. Are there any kind of questions about where that ended up?
Doesn't look like it.
No, what I was gonna share with Tim with some of the background on this is that when it comes to the town potentially taking over land, we have to balance the costs of doing that, but also the benefits. So in this case, it's a little triangle of land behind the Federated Church by Lefebvre Lane.
Yes, yeah,
And it's like, it's not developable, so conserving it isn't gonna protect it from development. But we have no control over it if it's privately owned,
right,
and it is kind of an important little spot in the Allen Brook.
yeah,
Coming down there, so we've had conversations about whether we wanted to get involved with that parcel, and
okay,
David's showing it there on
Yeah.
the screen for you.
Now this is most likely related to the beaver group
Yeah.
that was previously posted up at the Allen Brook Bridge. There's
Yeah.
a reasonable expectation that, when that bridge went out, it would be highly possible for the beavers to move a short distance upstream and find new habitat.
They
The
had
bit-
previously been like directly behind my house. Like if you zoom to the top of Lefebvre Lane, like
Uh-huh.
the corner, and now like kind of go towards, see this? You can't tell where I'm pointing, but like yeah, in there. Right, basically, yeah.
Yeah, they're down in here now. Activity.
No, they like in between being like in the where they were on town land and where they are now, they were like directly in our backyard,
Oh,
basically,
yeah.
which was great. That was like the perfect, like they caused no issues
Right.
there. I wish they had stayed.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes with beavers, dam removal will cause them to move as we saw that happen naturally this spring when their pond went out, their lodge was no longer safe for them, so they moved locations. This is one of the realities of human wildlife conflict is we have built roads and infrastructure that is important to maintain. So these kind of decisions do get made, and I was glad to hear that ultimately the state expert on this was called in to assist and kind of provide a recommendation. The other piece of good news is that we know that there is currently an active beaver colony on town land again, here at the confluence of the Allen Brook. So we know that the beavers of the Allen Brook are alive and well on a whole. So this whole area is habitat for them, and they're moving quite a bit. And we've seen that with them being down in by the old stage roads estates and up and down this stretch of the Allen Brook. So it'll
And
continue to
over by
be.
Allen, by Seth Circle as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So a beaver babble wouldn't work in that one area?
So I wasn't party to the consultation, so I don't know exactly, but in general, my understanding is when you have a really low gradient system, and it's shallow moving water, you have much more limited options in terms of installing a beaver baffle. Because if you have a high gradient system and you have a tall dam, it's easier to place your beaver baffle well underwater with an exit at the bottom of the dam to drain the pond to a lower level. But if the system is really low gradient and there's not a lot of room to stick pipes and you just don't have as many options for controlling the overall pond level hydraulically there. And I think with this not hydraulically is not the right word.
Yeah.
And in this system, the road grade it's very close to the wetland. So a small change in water level can have a big impact. And what was observed on the road is that there was a bit of shifting in the sub base, or at least that's the understanding, the best understanding that I think folks have about what happened there. But there was a bit of a sinkhole that opened up on the edge of the road. So there were direct concerns about what was happening with that road based on the water table having raised from the beaver pond.
So aren't beaver just gonna move back there?
Yes, they may.
Are we gonna
Yep,
continue?
that's
to
certainly.
beaver every time if we don't change the habitat in some way?
This is the first time
Maybe it's not
I've heard
but-
of them being active in this particular
don't-
location.
The neighborhood's been here since 81, and there's been obviously beaver, but never in that one spot. And I think having them anywhere else in that sort of like contiguous strip that goes from like behind my house and the golf course all the way over is fine. So hope they will come back, and hopefully they come back just like a little bit up of that. But to David's point, like that part of our road is super low, and it wouldn't get installed now the way that it originally was. Like it was the first planned urban development in Williston in 81, and there are like if you came in my house, you'd be like, wow, they cut some corners. And so that like just like that spot, if the water table comes up, like it's already wet even when they're not there, it's swampy. So if it comes up at all, it's basically like level with the road. And I think one of the things that maybe wasn't done the way that we would do it now is the subgrade of the road. So the subgrade of the road in that one, in that spot in particular, is just really vulnerable to the water table coming up. So hopefully they totally come back and it's just like in a little different of a spot that's not as problematic.
Okay, we do need to keep moving. Won't be the last we hear of the beavers, I'm sure. Beavers of Allenbrook.
Yep, so Beavers of Allenbrook, plenty more there.
Beavers always get the last word.
Yeah.
So the other update, if you haven't seen this one yourself, is that share the screen again. Earlier in the spring, there was conversation in the Conservation Commission about a property that was going up for sale on Brownell Mountain that could potentially be a link to a trail system for there. That's this trail system right here, or this property right here. And there was some conversation about whether there was an opening or opportunity for the town to get involved and potentially propose an acquisition. I had reached out to the landowner at the time on Reed's recommendation, and the landowner had said, "We're figuring some things out. You know, we'll get in touch with you if we're interested in." And ultimately, what happened is that land sold recently, so the landowner never approached the town after that contact, and we learned about. I think this was a few weeks ago before break. that this parcel of land sold. So that's an update on that piece related to Brownell Mountain.
Dave, does this land have any development holdings or like pre-existing permits? Will this sort of property come back to us for anyone, making the step to develop it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it is an undeveloped parcel. There's certainly the potential for someone to put a home there. As far as I know, there are no pre-existing permits that have established a home site. So if this parcel were to be developed, 20 acres, this would come back to the Conservation Commission to be reviewed. There are some pre-existing features of this site that are worth noting, which is mainly the access road. So you can see it vaguely on this ortho
Yeah.
photo here, but that is the access road that runs up the edge of this parcel for the telecommunications equipment that is at the top of Brownell Mountain. And so this
Williston
ownership actually has a
telecommunications?
lease for that generates some income. I know that was advertised on the Zillow listing of that's a feature that comes with purchasing that site.
Interesting.
So that
Okay.
is a component of the home site that I don't think there would be any change to. But if a home was proposed, as far as I know, that would go through the full review process, most likely triggering a habitat disturbance assessment and full compliance with the bylaws.
Reed's got a question.
Yeah, sorry, I started to interrupt. Is the telecommunications parcel town owned?
No,
Okay,
Could you highlight the town-owned property?
town-owned property is here.
the big
Yeah.
So we're trying to get to that, Tim, because there are trails.
Yes.
And it's and there's potential for some really beautiful hiking and views and stuff from Brownell Mountain, but currently we don't have a place for people to park and access it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that's those updates, and I'll let you move on.
All right, thanks for the update, Dave. All right, now we're on to our priority discussion topics. The first topic of discussion is our ERF memo that went to Eric and the select board. Let's see, I guess I'll just talk for a little bit and to try and summarize where we're at. And I'll start by saying they did not take our recommendation. So I'll just lead with that. So the meeting did not go particularly well from that perspective and how the commission should sort of consider our next steps. They are not taking our recommendation by all sort of observations. So to summarize, we submitted our memo in early December. The recommendation was that rather than taking Article 6 back to the voters in the March town meeting, that the town adopt it as part of the overall budget, which is a revenue neutral for the town as well as cost neutral solution for residents. The town manager did not include that recommendation in the initial budget that went to the select board. And so we were asked mid-December-ish, I can't quite remember the timing on this, but Dave basically gave Kim and Reed and I a heads up that it's not in the town budget. The select board would like representatives from the WCC to be there in January. So Reed and I went last night to the select board meeting to essentially explain our recommendation. The overwhelming majority of the select board, expressed a point of view that they would rather not make the hard decision of putting it in the budget, rather perpetually keep this going out to ballot initiative. I expressed that, the commission talked about this and it was a unanimous recommendation that not be the perspective of, that the town should not follow that approach, that, it would lead to confusion among residents. Residents thought that they were voting for a permanent ballot initiative. I myself continue to have significant both legal and regulatory questions as to the basis of why they say this article expires. I actually don't understand anything that they've provided by way of explanation, and I continue to work with Eric on that. But the bottom line is that their perspective is that this is a really tough budget year, that
Again,
It always is.
always is. When has it not been? The chair commented directly that said, we don't know, or I guess he believes that this budget, has a high probability of being voted down. And that, this would, even if it were in the budget, this would have to be like one of the first things that comes out in a re-voting, which again, that's a matter of choice. Like, that is not a foregone conclusion. That is a choice that the select board would have made. So, from the perspective of what we should take away from this, there was a lot of back and forth. I think Reed and I represented our unanimous opinion very well to the commission. It did not win over any votes. And I'm really
except
bad.
Ellie Beckett said
Yep,
she would
except for Ellie.
support putting
Ellie
in
was the
budget.
one commissioner, and thank you for, I'm bad with names, so, Ellie, expressed support for our position and sort of an understanding that, voters could be confused, and she sort of agreed with our perspective that is worded such that you think it's a permanent, article.
And then we just went through a town planning process that said this should be funded, so.
So, that's the update. Now for the discussion. We happy to answer any questions, but ultimately they're, they were pushing hard on us to get behind another article. And, I wanted to express to them that our unanimous opinion is what we made to them and that we will talk about it this morning. So I think that's ultimately what we should talk about is, do we want to communicate back to Eric that, we should communicate something back to Eric. Go ahead, Reed.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what I walked out with is, the select board would like the Conservation Commission to reconsider going up to ballot. Knowing that the select board thinks they would not be able to fully fund the ERF. That they feel like they're either gonna have to put in partial funding, or in the case where budget does go down, that it would be one of the things that would get cut. This is basically what I heard. And that they agree with us on principle that this should have a revolving, longer term, steady funding source. And they do want to work toward that. In fact, the chair, Ted Kenny, said that he's open to a charter change if that's something that needs to happen in order to enable us to have a ballot measure that funds over multiple years. So
Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks. And thanks to Dave and Reed for doing that last night, and try to make the case, on behalf of the commission. I guess I don't know, maybe I'm just feeling pessimistic today, but I'm not surprised. I mean, the ERF, in my mind, will always be that low hanging piece of fruit that they can easily grab to cut back the budget because there's no staff, there's no, no salaries or anything like that they'd have to navigate to cut back on the budget with the ERF. So I at least somewhat pleased to hear that Ted Kenny would be interested in changing the charter to codify the ERF into the
Can I just
budget.
say, I don't think that's necessary. And it kind of bothers me that is what their perspective is, because I looked at the town charters for South Burlington, which has a similar penny for paths measure, and it's not in their charter. And when you read the plain language of local election law, it says that all statutes are vested, or all articles, if approved, are vested with the voters. And there was a sub argument going on at the select board last night, which I frankly disagree with personally, but I didn't, discuss it last night, is that, well, the voters today shouldn't be making the decisions that taxpayers are paying tomorrow. I disagree.
Literally how towns work.
That's literally it. That's
That's
the whole point.
yeah. I
The
mean, we do that
responsibility
every
of the
time we
select board.
vote.
And that is what the plain language of the statute says, which is that once an article is approved by voters, it is vested with the voters
Until replaced or
Until
repealed or whatever.
replaced or rescinded.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how else to say it other than I strongly disagree with the perspective of the select board. And it's also like it was not my place to argue that point last night.
It's mostly the town manager's office who.
I
Right?
don't disagree with you, Reed. I have similar feelings. I guess my perspective is if we want to get this thing into to a point where it is just a part of the town budget and not the first piece of fruit they reach for to cut. If that's what we need to do, then let's do it. The town board, the select board will turn over at some point, and there'll be different perspectives with that turnover. So I guess in my mind, the clearer we can make it in whatever piece of paper what needs to be in, the better. Yeah.
I asked Jean directly if she would prefer to have this article go out to ballot for the next 50, 25, 50 years. And she said absolutely yes. She would rather voters vote on this every single year for now until we're done with this enterprise. So that it's very, that is another perspective that I wanted to sort of share. I found it to be pretty remarkable, but she answered my question very clearly. So, yeah. My personal opinion on this is that I almost want to I want to get a second opinion of the legal reading that our Article 6 does not stand. And I don't know how feasible that is, or but I definitely have some friends who are lawyers who have expertise in statutory readings of things like this, but it would be just that. It would just be a second opinion of, is the town lawyer being overly conservative? There's clearly a strong undercurrent on the select board that like they want this article to persist into the future. I think that if the select board was giving the town manager's office clear direction that we want this article to not go out to vote, but we also want it to stand, that like the town manager could find a way to do that. So I'm just kind of giving you a clear interpretation of sort of the dynamics in the room last night. I think that we are not getting an alternative review of that sort of legal interpretation because there is a strong preference on the select board to sort of not challenge that legal review. Do you agree with that, Reed? There was maybe 2 select board members who kind of said like, oh, that would be great if we didn't have to go out, but
Yeah. My sense is that they are the best information they have is what the manager's office is telling them, which is that what passed is only for 1 year, and if we want to go out again, it would be for 1 year. And I think we'd have to go back with a very specific ask that we get a second legal opinion on the mechanics of an article like what we've passed. Whether that means that we don't need to go back out, or whether that means that when we go back out this year, we change the wording or whatever to make it clear that it's a multi-year thing. I think we'd have to specifically ask for that of the select board, and they would have to ask the manager's office to turn around and do that.
So if we went
I
back
think
out,
there's another element, which is that like we could get a second legal opinion. I don't even know how that would happen. And the town could say like, okay, well we're gonna defer to our
Mhm.
attorney's interpretation, right? Like I just at the end of the day, is this like the town manager is making a decision about how the town is enforcing this policy? Or do you imagine actually saying like the way you're doing it is illegal?
I said in my email to Eric last night, I think it's illegal. And I'm waiting for him to refute that.
Mhm.
Candidly. I didn't quite say illegal. I said contrary to statutory
Yes, yeah,
permission.
yeah.
Lynn,
yeah, if we were to go back out, they were not open to like a short term for the next 5 years kind of thing, so that we're not going out every year.
only
Yeah.
Ellen, was that her name?
Ally.
Ally was open to the suggestion.
Ally wanted to put it in the budget and keep it there over the next few years.
Right.
Kind of the way that we recommended, essentially, we recommended. The other select board members said, per what the manager's office has told us about legal counsel. If you were to go back out, each one is for 1 year, each time the article is there.
Like, why 1 year versus 5 years?
Because,
Just to reduce like voter fatigue and,
no, because the town's legal counsel has
Yeah.
said an article like that can only collect taxes for that fiscal year.
Yeah, that's the rub, is that if you could do it for 5 years, you should just have it be for perpetuity, really, until it is rescinded or replaced by the voters. So a 5-year ballot initiative would be. So Ellie's suggestion would, I'll just finish my thought. A 5-year ballot initiative would sort of be contrary to the point, although it might appease some people on the select board. Ultimately, Ellie's suggestion was, let's just make a commitment as a select board to put it in the budget for 3 years and then potentially
Back out.
revisit it. You know, with another sort of reaffirming ballot initiative. In the 3rd or 4th year, which I think that is a perfectly reasonable compromise. If the select board,
There was no
Word
support
play.
beyond Ally for
No,
that.
no.
So.
Yeah.
Eric has his hand up.
Eric,
Thanks. I guess I'll just say that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns might be an option to explore as well for getting some potentially free legal guidance on behalf of not behalf of the town, but in connection to this. This is one of the things that they do. They provide it to, I think they also provide it to the towns as well. I don't know how we
So,
could do that, but that's, I think, an
I
option to explore.
very subtly in my email back and forth with Eric suggested that he go to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, even pointing to a specific section of their website that appropriately characterizes what the town was referring to as Dillon's rule. Dillon's rule basically says that the towns of the municipalities of Vermont are bound by the statutory authorizations that they have been approved by the legislature. And so municipalities have been empowered by the towns through their town charters to do certain activities and actions like collect taxes and whatnot. So that's really where the charter discussion sort of comes in, is like, what's in the charter? Well, Williston's charter gives us, very explicitly says that we have the authority to put articles out for direct voters approvals, right? Anyways, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns has an excellent resource on managing the difference between policies and ordinances and what is within the town's authority to issue, as far as like what is a policy that can be approved by the select board versus an ordinance that is like enforced by police officers. And that's sort of the square around Dillon's rule that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns sort of draws, which is very different from direct voter approval of initiatives. So like, that's really the main distinction here that I'm trying to draw out, is that this is not the select board saying we're gonna have this ERF tax. That would be contrary to Dylan's rule. They don't have the authority to just put a separate tax on all of our property tax bills. But we do have the authority to issue an article, have that article be approved, and then have that article stand in law until voters rescind or replace it. That is the law. And yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I do know how to read law and interpret it. And that's my plain reading of it. So that's kind of what we're looking to get the town to sort of respond to if we wanted to ask for that second opinion, which, you know, I think that's really, those are our two options, right? We can either go the route of saying, sure, put it back out the ballot. Send us some text that we can review and we'll try to wordsmith it. Or we can say, we really don't like that approach. It's long-term gonna undermine public support for a very popular initiative that already got 3-1 majority support. We want a second opinion on your legal basis, you know, and anyways, I think those are our two options. If anyone sees another option out there, let's put it out there. Read.
Yeah, I think we should prepare to go to the advertise and sell a ballot item again. But in the meantime, I would continue to try to get clarity because it may affect what we put into the new article, the wording that we go with. I don't want to go back out and sell an article again. I think we could, but to your point, the select board at the very end, it comes with a cost, which is months of work for the Conservation Commission that we should be spending on implementing the strategy,
right,
as opposed to trying to get money for the strategy.
Right. We're having this discussion for over half an hour or limited time rather than, say, working on the actual ERF strategy that I think we'd all rather be spending time on. Okay, does anyone have any suggestions on process for next steps in this meeting? Does anyone feel like we want, yeah, go ahead.
I guess I would just be curious about Eric's answer to you in our next meeting.
We could ask for a meeting with Eric
Yeah,
so that we're not just waiting for an email response. David, is that Maroney, is that what are your thoughts on, you know, how we could constructively work with the manager's office on this question of the expiration of the article, and is there anything we can do to prevent that in the future?
Yeah, great question. So I think you are in a bit of a tricky situation because the timing is somewhat tight, and you know, you'll have to have an initiative on the draft ballot or on the warned ballot. And I can get some information on the timing of when all of that goes down to understand how much time you really have. But
I
in
believe
terms
Eric's
of,
gonna take care of that at this point. He's
Yeah.
he's gonna plan to have on the draft ballot an initiative that says something like, shall the voters approve continuation of a half penny, blah, blah, blah.
right.
We don't have confirmation of that.
That was at the end of the meeting, the exchange I had with Ted about, we might wanna say, shall the,
Okay, so
Town continue.
you're taking that to be what the direction of.
Eric said something that made me think he's gonna put that into the draft warning until he hears further.
Okay, I will just note that the
But we should
ballot,
confirm that.
the ballot initiative for the town library bond is also going out to warn at the same time, and they were working on that all year. I know from, you know, my my house partner working on the library bond. So if they just drop this in here, you know, a month before the election, like that's gonna be you know, I guess we're gonna have to be the ones to sort of take that. Maybe that is what Eric Wells took from that meeting. In which case, let's see what draft language they come up with, but I want to continue pursuing my sort of questions to Eric.
Yeah, sorry, and I interrupted David, but I just wanted to clarify that I believe Eric has it on his to-do list to include an article unless he hears otherwise. Because that's what the select board wants to see.
Mhm.
I'll pursue some more information on that. To answer the second part of your question, Reed, I think the way forward would be to try to schedule a meeting with Eric and potentially the town's legal counsel. And I would just, from what you're saying, I would, try to approach it in the most collaborative light possible, and that you're really have a strong conviction that the answer you're getting is incorrect, and that it has, some, as you've stated, some very important implications, and you just want to get to the bottom of it. I think you could set up that meeting. I just don't know how quickly that could happen, and whether that um, would fit the timeline in terms of getting an answer on that before a ballot would need to be in.
So request a meeting with the town manager and legal counsel to discuss how to do what the select board wants, which is to have an article that can last more than 1 year.
Right. And I think the way to keep it constructive is to say, we had this meeting with the select board. It was acknowledged that this is very important, and it was also acknowledged that that this is in the best interest of the town, and we need to do more work collectively to figure out what the pathway is to enabling this, whether it is a more clear understanding of what the law is, or a change to the charter, and setting up what would need to take place to make that happen. So that's my take on kind of the short term, long term, is the way the cards have been dealt. I think, you have a pretty short window. So you may end up getting pushed in the direction of the ballot for this year. I don't know. I'm going to try to get that information on timeline. I'll follow up with that.
Thank you.
Okay,
But
yeah.
yeah, that's just kind of my take on short term, long term there.
I'm gonna also suggest that I think that if we see draft language come back to us, it's going to be very time limited. I think it's going to be very specific to, shall be collected for fiscal year 26. And I want to sort of push back on that wording, even though there was some discussion last night at the select board about how the current wording could have been interpreted by voters as being a permanent authorization. And I guess I wouldn't want that to sort of overly restrict us.
Yeah, I don't want it to go the other way and have the ballot initiative very specifically say it's only for 1 year.
Right. Yeah.
Until we're 100% clear amongst everybody that it can't be more than 1 year.
Because again, South Burlington voted on their initiative in 2018, and it's still in effect. And they have a wonderful resource updating voters about all of the money that was collected and the work that they were doing with it. And it seems very consistent with like my interpretation of how the statute was written. And so I wouldn't want it to sort of be overly restrictive.
I mean, to the degree to which you do have a pathway to get some kind of third party legal counsel, confirming or at least suggesting that there is some, a basis to your argument, I think would be helpful before jumping into a meeting. It's tough. Yeah, where is that going to necessarily come from? But I think if you have a chance of making anything happen in the short term, you'd really have to make sure that you have a very clear understanding of how that all plays out in advance of going into any meeting. I think if you don't, then it's just kind of, all right, we're all figuring this out together. And that may be the best way to go in the long term is, all right, let's just figure this out together to make this happen. But there may not be the ability to make it happen in the short term if there's not a very clear understanding of
Right.
yeah, approach.
Okay. I think we know enough to sort of move on to the next steps. I think I will remain in contact with Eric. Dave will also confirm sort of next steps on behalf of the town and what we should expect next. I don't think there's anything for us to vote on further on this topic. This was just sort of as a general update and to get a sense of what the commission members are feeling right now. I'll take away from this, I think generally the select board still supports the environmental reserve fund being added to. It sounds like the dollar value that was approved by voters is happy with us, and if the voters approved it again, it would be happy with the select board. They're not in opposition to this. They're not gonna put it in the budget. And we're very likely gonna look at some language from the town about what a new article would look like. And in the meanwhile, we will try to sort of get a better understanding of the legal basis for the town's perspective that this article is not permanent. And we'll sort of report back on the status of those discussions. But in the meantime, short term, we want to make sure that whatever language that might go out to warn is not overly restrictive either, and that we don't actually take a step backwards.
Yeah, if it was consistent with last year's article, we could reuse pretty much verbatim
Right,
our advertising and outreach information.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Any last thoughts on that? We'll move on.
Thank you for all your work on that.
All right, thanks. Okay, then let's move on. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion.
I'll be right back. My dog has to go out.
Fiscal year.
Watch out for those
25.
beavers.
Is that
She's
what my
so
dog does?
old and deaf that she doesn't even know they're there. Like she has no idea because she's so ancient.
So we all had some homework over the break. We wrote up some short blurbs of what our projects throughout over the fiscal year 25 looked like. Dave, do you have that document up, and do you think you could maybe screen share it with us so we can look at the status of it?
I'm pulling that up right now.
Thank you. Did everyone get a chance to log in over the break and put in some words? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Looks like we're filling out nicely.
So I'll just say very quickly, this is the first time I'm taking a look at a little while. Last time I looked, there wasn't this such information. This is great. There also are some formatting instructions that are going to explicitly limit this to one page. So there will need to be some paring back, but it does look like everything in here is really great. And thank you all for providing such thorough accounting so far.
I think it's easier to trim things back than to create.
yeah, I wrote the town plan section in the verbose way, and knowing that we'll probably condense it down significantly.
Yeah.
We don't need to list all
Yeah,
the
we're
different
not gonna-
chapters that we reviewed,
No,
but
we're not.
we could highlight one or two that were really meaningful or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, excellent. Then this will probably be a pretty quick update and status report. So looks like it's filled in. Dave, do you want to work with me on the sort of streamlining and getting it into final shape?
Sure, that sounds good. That sounds good, Dave. Yeah, because the deadline for this is the 16th, which
Yeah.
will be before the next meeting. So that seems good. That's next Friday.
I only have one concern with that, which is just your bandwidth. Dave, because
Yeah, well,
I mean, the annual report is important, but I wouldn't say it's as important as securing $110,000 for the ERF. So I would rather your time be spent on that.
Sure.
Didn't Kim say she was gonna be the
But that Kim was gonna be our editor.
editor? Yeah.
very conveniently has
Well, that-
now logged off.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
just,
she said that.
the bus just came. Yeah, I think she said once, if you guys can get stuff in there, then I'll
Mhm.
do
Okay.
polishing. So we can confirm whenever she comes back, but I would love to keep your attention on the ERF stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Right,
thanks,
fair
Reed. I mean, I think in terms of the ERF stuff, that it's a relatively, I'm a minor player in that. I can get some information about what the timelines are going to be, and I can facilitate, setting up conversations or meetings with the town manager's office. But I don't foresee at this time that that's incompatible with assisting with this. But yeah, I do.
Dave, he was referring to me.
I'm
Sorry.
talking about Dave Westman's time. Not that your time's not important, Mr. Maroney.
So
Yeah.
sorry,
That
the
was
Daves, the Daves.
Yeah,
All good, all
DW.
good.
Yeah.
Too many
Yes.
days.
Your capacity, Dave, W,
Yeah.
is important.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I'm totally happy to see this next time in its final draft. So let's just check in with Kim then when she logs
Great.
back in.
She would do a great job with this.
Fantastic.
She would.
Okay, seeing as Kim has not come back on camera to see that we've volunteered her for a responsibility yet, let's move on. More or less trying to keep track of time here. So Dave had a very nice suggestion on the agenda. Dave Maroney. Oh, there's Kim. Kim, everyone did their assignment for the annual report, and we want to ask you to help to work with Dave Maroney on final edits to get it down to one page.
Yep. I'm happy to do that.
Get your machete out.
Yeah, great. And first
When is it? When is it due?
16th.
Or
Sorry,
is it
16?
next Friday the 16th.
Great.
And Reed said you can cut all the chapter lists that he included in his summary as a first order of business.
Do I have a copy of this already?
You do.
Okay.
I think you did.
A link to it was emailed
Yeah.
to all of us, so you should have one of those, like, you've been invited to edit a document things, but
Yeah.
maybe.
If you just search in your inbox for David Maroney,
Mhm.
it comes up.
Let me just make sure.
Okay, while she's doing that, I'll introduce the next topic, which is sort of geared towards our newest members, Lynn and Tim, and to some extent all of us, as like a refresher that one of the primary functions of the Conservation Commission is to review projects in their sort of path through the DRB process. And if you haven't been an applicant in the past, or you haven't followed one of these proceedings from start to finish, it can be kind of confusing. So I think this is a great idea. Dave has offered to lead this discussion and sort of pump us along the way for more experienced members of like how this sort of looks and how it goes.
Great. Thanks, Dave. So I had planned this great idea, and then I got sick and was completely out yesterday. So I didn't have a chance to. I was planning on pulling some materials for us to look at. So this is going to be brief and a little informal. So I just want to point out a couple things about development review. So the reason I thought it'd be a good idea to do this today is that we have a development review to look at next week. So this is the DRB agendas online on the town website. And although I will always link to this in advance of development review coming forward in the commission, I do want to point out this information is always there on the town website, oftentimes well in advance of when we look at it as a commission, or you look as a commission. As soon as it comes in and gets cataloged, it starts going up online. And so once something goes on the agenda, even if it's a few months out, information will start coming in. So next week, we'll be looking at DP 2408.1, Jim and Lucy McCullough, LLC, requesting pre-application review of a proposed development with 32 dwelling units at 88 Mountain View Road in the RZD. So when development review comes in, you'll always get some information about the applicant, the density, the location, all of that, with a couple of key pieces of information that that you're going to be paying attention to. So for today, since I didn't really get a chance to pull a bunch of materials, I'm just going to point out a couple of quick things and then hopefully a chance to turn it over to a little bit of back and forth just for the sake of our newer members, to hear from people who've been doing this for a while, just comments, tips, anything that you've learned while in development review in the past. So for an application, I'd say the first thing that you generally want to pay attention to is there'll always be a project narrative. There's also a staff report that's not available here. The staff report is a document that I put together, so I'll have that before next time on this particular one. We can look at one from the past, but just to keep things focused on here for now. Project narrative is where I'm getting a lot of the information for these. And if you look at a project narrative, they'll come in.
Oh, sorry, David. That's submitted by the applicant, right?
Yes,
The project
exactly.
narrative.
That's submitted by the applicant. So they come in different shapes and forms, often influenced by whether this is sort of a big time application where you have a large developer with a lot of experience and a lot of resources, or this is a family that's doing a single subdivision and they don't have as many resources or experience. And so for a big development that's being represented by a civil engineer, oftentimes it might be more detailed, but usually this is where the information is going to come in that's going to set the tone. So for this quick example that you're going to dig into next week, project narrative is actually a little more detailed than some of the other ones I've seen. They've provided more information than I probably would in narrative form, at least initially, on the general information, physical conditions of the site and surrounding uses, which is pretty great. But the most important thing, of course, the summary of what the proposed project is. It's going to give you your overview of what is being proposed and the components of it before
David,
you
would
look
zoom in
at
little
a site
Would you,
design or a site plan.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
It's kind of small. It's hard to even read the section headings. Could you zoom a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, perfect. So that's, general information, physical conditions, surrounding uses, and the proposed project. So one thing that I think can be not a mistake, but when you're first looking at these, there's a temptation to look at the site plan first and jump right into the site plan. And if you don't know kind of what the project purpose is and what's being proposed exactly, it can be more confusing to interpret that. Now, the objective for the Conservation Commission, right? You're the citizen advisory committee that is tasked with representing and protecting the natural resource interests of the town of Williston. So when it comes to development review, you're not tasked with looking at the compliance with the entire bylaw. You're mainly looking at compliance with a couple of chapters of the bylaw that have to do with natural resources. Our conservation areas, our watershed protections, and some of our general requirements for open space development and appropriate layout and density of development. One of the things that is illuminated in each of the staff reports is that the requirements depend very much on which zoning district the development is proposed in. Most of what you see in the Conservation Commission is going to either be in the ARZD, the Agricultural Rural Residential Zoning District. That's where we have the strictest rules and interpretations regarding protections for natural resources, and the RZD. But as you've seen recently, there was development in the industrial zoning east, where you looked at the CSWD plan. So we know that the Conservation Commission will get tasked at looking at developments that pop up in all of the districts, provided there are impacts to the natural resources. So as we usually do in the staff report, but it's a little bit different in this narrative, is they've actually looked at our bylaw and they've called out specific chapters that are relevant to the application here, which is, I think, why this narrative goes a little bit above and beyond. So they've looked at the chapters of our bylaw and they've made comments in advance. So the ones that pertain to the Conservation Commission are down here a little bit. Scenic view sheds is one of our conservation areas, as you know. Landscaping and street trees, those are the kinds of things that will come up, and I'll put into the staff report for you to review at a later date. But in general, always start with the project narrative because that'll give you a really firm grounding in what the applicant is trying to accomplish. And often then, where there is the most fertile ground for conversation around how to adjust that if there are issues with natural resource impacts. Okay, so after that, the site plan and any accompanying resources. After you read the project narrative, you generally read the staff report. That staff report is designed to kind of walk you through everything, but the pictures that I put in, the little clips are always small, and you always want to look at the full site plan to get a sense of what you're looking at. So that'll show you the full layout about what is being proposed. But the reason the staff report there is that it still, when you're looking at a layout, it's always, no matter what, it's an attempt to fit a lot of information in one place, and things can be obscured. For example, where are the wetlands? Where are the conservation area zones that have been designated in Williston? You really need to break those things out one at a time. And that's where the staff report will come in.
I'm biting my tongue to not ask questions about this site layout, Dave.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't want to really get into this one too much because we want to reserve your comments for next time when the actual review is happening. But that's just to give you
something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. A quick comment, right? The narrative and the site plan are kind of those, in the staff report, are the three most important parts. So let me actually go back here and grab a staff report from last year, just so we can show Tim a quick peek, because I think everyone else has, of course, seen one.
Tim, we've been blessed with conservation planners who have written excellent staff reports for decades.
Yep.
But in my time, there's been 4 conservation planners, and all of them have put together really excellent reports for the commission.
Nice.
Okay, so here's one that many of you are familiar with. This was the staff report for the CSWD MRF facility. Of course, this is a project that went through multiple rounds and revisions. So this was the last round, but you'll see that, like the project narrative, I've put a project summary here. I tend to bold things that I think will be sort of critical information, but you do want to read everything. And I'll include snippets and screenshots that overlay key pieces of information and maps for you to better understand the context of the site with regards to the protections, natural resource protections in town. We'll have a sort of quick chart that shows the key areas for review, but in general, we're looking so at open space development, as I mentioned, if you're in the agricultural, rural, residential area, and then the different areas that are considered conservation areas in Williston, which we won't get into now, but things like this significant wildlife habitat areas, core habitat, wildlife travel corridors. We review things like farmlands of local importance. It's a little more of a niche area, but there's a map that's been created in town that shows specific parcels of farmland that are designated high importance. Similar with the scenic viewshed map, it's a specific map that was created for the town back in actually 1988. So it's pretty dated, but we still use it as kind of the first pass filter for understanding when a project is likely to impact a scenic viewshed. So that's one of those areas that is impossible to be fully objective on. So it often comes to the Conservation Commission to have a conversation about where the line is between appropriate development or not that impacts a scenic viewshed. Special flood hazard areas, streams, wetlands, lakes, and ponds, what we call unique natural communities, and uncommon, rare, threatened, and endangered species. So I'll try to share with Tim, I'll share with you a link to the bylaws that kind of that go over these different areas, so you can
Yeah.
dig into that. But
I
that's just
appreciate
kind of our quick summary on that. And then
There's
the
also,
report,
Dave,
go
aren't the
ahead.
bylaws also in the new website and the resources that we developed?
Yes,
Thought
yeah,
we added
it's
that.
still under construction, but yeah, will be.
Yeah.
So then the rest of the report goes through those sections one at a time, the relevant sections. So it elaborates on, okay, this project site is in a significant wildlife habitat area. What is the actual concern, and I'll try to provide that information. In this case, it was, okay, the original site plan completely blocked a travel corridor, and that kind of kicked off the conversation, created the requirement for habitat disturbance assessment and all of that. I will usually provide quotes to relevant sections of the bylaw so that they're in one place. However, I do recommend that, when you have a project coming up that, significant wildlife habitat areas has been called out as something that you're going to review, it's helpful to just go there and kind of refresh and read through. Each individual section is not very long. But it's helpful to just have a sense, and I refresh almost every time I'm doing a review myself. It's hard to memorize things like bylaws that are very specific, but I will try to provide those links and direct quotes to key components of the bylaw that are guiding the discussion. So that's the substance, the main substance of the report, and then at the end, there'll be a quick summary of findings and draft recommendations. So that's very important, is that those recommendations are draft recommendations that are meant to be discussed by the Conservation Commission, revised by the Conservation Commission, added to. We put them there as planning staff to try to assist your process, but I feel very strongly that it would be a misuse of having a conservation planner and a conservation commission if we made the decisions too strongly. So the draft language is usually put in place when we think, okay, here's something that is likely to be relevant here and seems like a reasonable path forward. And it's straightforward enough that likely the Conservation Commission is going to come to the same conclusion, and they might want to tweak it a little bit. But this is sort of a best guess first draft. In other cases, I'll simply say, you need to make a decision in this area, or here's a couple of options for how you could decide on this.
Yeah, I'll just point out that sometimes the recommendations have like an A and a B. It's like, it'll start out like the Conservation Commission, blah, 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 blah. Either A, this, or B, that, and then we have to decide which one is appropriate
Okay.
to adopt.
Yeah, this is usually where this conversation sort of culminates, is that we'll have a long discussion, we'll sort of keep it going, and then eventually, when we've sort of exhausted questions or comments or sort of thoughts, the chair will sort of try to wrangle everyone to say, like, okay, well, now let's look at the recommendations. Does this sort of fit what we've been talking about? Is it consistent? Sometimes it's like spot on, out of the park. Yep, that's exactly what we've been talking about. That's the recommendation we want the applicant to proceed with. Other times, like, oh no, total redraft, and we'll actually revise that recommendation in real time on the screen and say, like, okay, this is what we want them to do. This is the sort of, these are the requests. This is what we are thinking.
Okay.
Right. I was trying to find real quick an example of one where the recommendations weren't final yet, but these ones that I'm pulling off online, they've already been finalized. So after you finalize your recommendations as a committee, I republish the report and post it online. So you can find the original draft ones, but we'd have to dig back a little bit. I don't want to take time doing that right now. So
Yeah.
this is a relatively simpler, more straightforward proposal to amend a building envelope that the commission looked at recently, and I think Lynn was a part of those discussions as well.
There's the historic farm, and they want to move to that site.
Okay, so yeah, apologies that that's sort of the quick tour for the benefit of the newer members, but I thought it'd be a good idea to do this too because it can be a little bit of a forum for those of you who've done this before, who've looked at a lot of these to if you have any comments you'd like to share, um, if you have anything you'd like to say about kind of what it's like to go through this process, now can be a great time to just kind of informally share some of those comments.
I will just say that even if I wasn't chairing these meetings, I would still have my laptop because I find Google Maps to be incredibly helpful in this process. The little postage size stamp, the picture of like where the parcel is not usually enough for me to actually like fully understand like the landscape and like where in the context of like other parks or roads or public access points, etc. So like that's why I would always have my computer here is because while we're having these discussions, I'm zooming in and I'm looking at like other like how does this postage size stamp in the staff report sort of compare to the landscape, right, that we're talking about. Eric, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I'll just I guess add on to what you're saying, Dave, and pre-pandemic we would always arrive and there'd be a giant, I don't know, like 3 foot by 2 foot printout of the development bylaws and all that. And we've essentially gone, or I think we have gone paperless since then. So I agree, Dave. It's very helpful for me to have my computer in front of me to browse through these materials and in real time during the conversations. Um, and I also just want to add that Dave Maroney, I think you do a great job with these, summarizing these and doing all that background work for us and teeing up what I feel are always the real questions that the Conservation Commission really needs to dig into and address. And I appreciate that. It really helps us focus our time and not resources, but our time on the important issues around each of these development proposals.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, my goal is to uh, free up your time to spend as little time on development review as possible while, really just sending fully to you the things that are in the realm of the Conservation Commission. So I'm sharing my screen real quick. So this is,
You have a comment from Reed. Dave, hold on real quick.
okay, go ahead.
Dave, were you gonna, after this, were you gonna go over like pre-app versus discretionary and things like that, or what happens with the recommendations after?
I'm happy to do that.
Or I can comment on it. Why
Yeah,
don't you
please,
go ahead then
please
with the
do.
bylaws? Go ahead.
Let's start with the bylaws and then if we could get like, I think doesn't planning staff have a convenient map that sort of walks through the DRB process,
Yes,
Dave?
I have to see if I can find that on the quick. So the Williston bylaw, yeah, just to make a quick comment on this. As I mentioned, there are many chapters to this, and only some of them are relevant to the Conservation Commission work, but they are all online. It's very handy, searchable PDFs, and there's also a complete document, which is just everything together, which is a little overwhelming. In general, so the place to start, this is really for Tim, right? Is chapter 27, the conservation areas and conservation area map. Chapter 29, watershed health, which provides some information about how we handle wetland buffers and that kind of thing. And then these individual zoning district chapters are relatively short. But 31, the agricultural rural residential zoning district, lays out the town's process for what we call open space development, which is if you're in the agricultural rural residential zoning district, which is about 2/3 of town, everything outside of the village center, the industrial zoning districts, the development centers, etc. Then if you are developing a parcel that's over 10.5 acres, 3/4 of the acreage needs to be put aside as protected open space, which is a big deal. This is something that Williston has done that makes a really big impact for conservation. That can be hard to quantify sometimes because you look at all the development that's happened over the years, and you might see a home site, but it turns out that actually like 3/4 of that has been put aside to be protected open space and will not see significant development unless there's significant change in Williston's bylaws moving forward. So it's a great thing that's been done, and it's a process that we'll kind of walk through quite a bit to advise on how the applicant should be laying out and platting that open space. So that's all in chapter 31. So this little section here is kind of the quick starter area. And the official map, you don't actually really need to dig into this too much. That's something that I look at quite a bit. But when development overlaps with these features like wildlife travel corridors and core habitats, which do extend a good chunk over the rural residential zoning district, that triggers the need for a habitat disturbance assessment, which is where an independent biologist needs to go into the site and do some actual on the ground work to understand what wildlife resources are there and how that protecting those can be incorporated into the site plan.
And a major component of that is that is actually being done under contract with the town. And that is a relatively recent change, that the commission was part of the decision-making and actually changing the town bylaws so that it used to be the applicant paying for the wildlife habitat assessment. And thus they had control over, what the finding
Right.
potentially would look like. Not always the case, but certainly there's just a different relationship there. So now the town manages that process, which we have found, all of us, I think, have found that to be a far preferable option, to have the biologist working for the town and effectively us as a commission, so that we can ask them direct questions.
And you pass that fee on to the applicant?
Yes.
Okay,
We charge a fee rather than having them hire somebody.
okay,
And also as part of that, we started inviting the biologist to our meeting.
okay,
So that when we're meeting with the applicant, the biologist is there.
Yeah.
And the biologist is working for us, so we can
Right.
ask them questions, and we just find they're a little bit more objective than when
yeah.
they're writing a report and they're not present.
Yeah,
And they're working for the applicant.
okay,
Great. Yeah, that's a great point, Reed. And for Tim, the applicant is present during this review, so it's a good opportunity to be able to ask questions, but it's also helpful. It can be a new experience to be kind of reviewing this and with the applicant present, and especially if you have to voice concerns, it can be something that takes a little bit of time to experience.
And in fact, some applicants have also said that they really liked having the presentation with the biologist because they actually learned a lot about. Let's say if somebody's subdividing their property, they learned a lot about their property and
right,
the ecology there, things like
yeah.
that.
Okay, so I don't want to take up too much more time. This was a little more disorganized than I had initially hoped for, but hopefully this was useful. Reed, do you want to make those comments about the pre-app app?
Sure. In your email is a link if you want to open it up to the process flow, which I think, Tim, you'd benefit from just like walking through.
Sure.
But it's an infographic that was put together when there were a lot of public questions coming up around like 2020-ish about, well, how does this whole process work? And if I have a concern as a member of the public, do I go to the planning commission, do I go to the conservation commission, do I show up at the DRB meeting and complain? Like, what do I do?
Okay.
So this was
Or all of the above.
or all the above. But what was happening is a lot of people would show up to the DRB meeting and they would come with a complaint about the bylaws.
Yeah.
Well, the planning commission writes the bylaws
Right,
with input from conservation and energy and all the other advisory committees. And there you go, it's up there. So the rules by which development happens get written by the planning commission and accepted by the select board. But once the rules are written, then the development review board's job is to enforce those rules.
Yeah.
With guidance from the advisory committee. So we are one of those advisory committees that are saying, hey, DRB, when you review this is the conversation we've had with the applicant. These are our recommendations. This is what's going on from a natural resources perspective.
We generally get two shakes at the stick.
Yes.
There's the pre-application and then the discretionary
Yeah.
permit.
okay,
So depending on the project, it may or may not go through growth management but we typically see it at pre-application, at which point it's like an idea of a project.
Yeah.
And we're giving feedback, and then if that project kind of coalesces and like, yes, we want to move forward with this, it's gonna work, all that stuff. Then we see it at discretionary permit. We try to catch as many things as possible at pre-application,
Okay,
because it's really frustrating as an applicant to come in and say, I want to build something.
right.
And you get a little bit of feedback, and then you put together a whole project and you hire engineers, and then you find out you can't do what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not what we want.
Right.
For a big project, a discretionary permit costs
A
thousands.
lot.
Yeah,
Thousands.
And time.
Yeah.
And time. So David works with the applicants outside of our meetings as well. So when he comes to the meeting with his staff report, he's educated by the materials that were brought in, but he's also educated by conversations with the applicant to understand maybe where there's some rub. Like, hey, here's where the applicant's not quite seeing things the way the town is seeing it. This is where we need the Conservation Commission to focus to
Okay,
clarify things
Yeah.
for the applicant
yeah,
and make that final recommendation.
okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
very helpful, thank you.
Yeah. And oftentimes there, oh, sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, I just wanted to mention also that, once in a while, someone will come in and ask us to fudge a little bit on the bylaws. And the answer is always no,
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
can't. And also the Development Review Board, even if we said, okay, they would say no.
yeah, yeah,
So, and
Yeah.
they do listen to us. They pay attention to what we
okay,
have given them, so.
yep,
Yeah.
helpful, thank you.
I think on that point, sometimes people come in and they like they think we're the decision maker, and we have to like reiterate like we're making like we have to like really reiterate strongly like our purview is to make a recommendation as stipulated in this way, and that it can be confusing for applicants, I think, sometimes about like what our role is.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point. I would say from what I've seen since I've been here is that this current DRB has a pretty strong track record of listening to the WCC. I haven't really seen any significant overruling of WCC recommendations. And that was certainly played out to dramatic effect during the review of the CSWD MRF facility when the DRB very strongly backed up the WCC and forced them to do a site replan. So that's helpful to know as well, that, with this current DRB, and I anticipate that moving forward, is that your recommendations certainly are very important, and have traction. Eric.
Yeah, I'll just second what you were saying, Dave. In my experience, the DRB, before the current DRB, has always more or less move forward with what the Conservation Commission has advanced to them. I think there's maybe been a few occasions when they've gone in a slightly different direction, or in some cases actually come back to us and said, hey, we're not quite clear on your guidance, or can you reconsider this particular guidance? And it's been there's been in some ways a conversation between the DRB and the Conservation Commission. And that's happened on a few times. It's certainly not a regular thing, but it's good to know that they do take our advice, and for the most part, and when they don't, they come back to us and have a conversation.
Eric, have there been any examples of a commissioner, a WCC member going to an actual DRB meeting to provide further explanation for what?
I think that's a good question. Maybe I know I haven't. I think I would say there's probably been, in my time, one or two occasions when a commissioner might have gone to a DRB meeting. I can't think of a particular. I think it was. I can't remember if it was the Glazer project or a different one, but I do know there was a time when an occasion or two when maybe it was Catamount, when there was a big project under consideration, and the planning office coordinated a joint meeting between the Conservation Commission and the DRB to have a dialogue about whatever the topic of the day was, the issue of the day, which was very helpful for addressing that particular issue and talking through it.
Right, and certainly would be an exceptional project of, big importance. And
Yeah.
the Glazer property, this would, I guess you may have been here for maybe the tail end of that. The Glazer development, which is going to
About to
happen,
start.
about to start on the opposite side of the road from Wildflower Circle, was such an important project that the WCC and I think the DRB had appointees in the sort of special plan committee,
Okay.
and they were sort of there and then representing and reporting back to us. So our now retired colleague Gary was the one sitting in on that for us, and he would come back and give updates.
Okay.
That is an exceptional project, though. We haven't seen one of those in a couple of years now.
Yeah. So one last quick thing I'll say on this. Thanks again, Reed, for finding this. This is great. I didn't have a chance to dig this out. Is that we've
It
talked.
feels like credit. I think it was Emily.
I just mean thank you for finding it. Yeah, Emily made this. Emily is great. Our senior planner. For those of you who have met her, and Emily's usually involved in most of these reviews as well, behind the scenes. So we've had discussions as planning staff about the names of these stages, how they in some ways are misleading, as the conversation was alluding to a little bit. Pre-application should in some ways really be concept plan review. If a developer comes in with too firm of a plan, as I think someone mentioned earlier, it can cause problems. Discretionary permit is, and then discretionary permit precedes final plans, but even when the DRB has signed off on the discretionary permits, final plans have been submitted, the developer doesn't get to then go break ground on the site. And that's been a problem in the past, is people think, okay, I got my final plans, platted and signed off and submitted and recorded with the town. I can go. The developer has to actually go do a bunch of other things. They've got to make sure they've got their legal documents, their development agreement, all of that, and get an administrative permit and all of that before they can actually begin. So, but with the WCC and the advisory committees, it's really these first two phases that you're involved in, and after that, it's administrative. So it's regulated by staff and the town manager's office and whoever needs to be involved with those later components of the project.
I know we need to move on, but one other thing came to mind, Tim, and that is during our conversations, it will come up where something in the bylaws doesn't seem to work the way it was intended for the project that's in front of us.
Okay.
So the bylaw will say, this is how it has to be. And we'll say, well, we really wish the bylaw said something else. That conversation has to be tabled outside of the development review. So we can say, we're noticing that, that the bylaw doesn't work great for your situation as an applicant. Here's what we have to put in the recommendations. But then we can put on our future topics, hey, we want to review this section of bylaws and consider recommending an amendment, which the planning commission can review and pass on to the select board, usually in batches with other changes to the bylaws. So we can sort of queue up changes to the bylaws, but we don't have those bylaw change discussions while we're reviewing an application. Right. We just make note of it and say, okay, we need to come back to that section because there's some work to do.
In the meantime, that project doesn't move forward.
That project has to move forward under the current bylaws.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
We can't say, well, we're gonna bend the rules like Kim and Laura were talking about. We can't do that. It has to be, we have to go by the book because that's what the DRB is gonna do. If we make a recommendation that's not consistent with the bylaws, the DRB is just gonna drop it.
Yeah.
They're gonna say, I can't do anything with this because it's not right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. That was great. Thanks for walking us through all that, Dave. And yeah, so let's close out our meeting with teeing up any topics that we wanted to talk about at the next January meeting. I believe so. One of the reasons why we're doing that review is that we're going to look at a new project in our January, what is that? I'm looking at the date. That'll be June 21st.
Yeah, January 21st. And, I realized since Lynn had joined, we hadn't necessarily done any focused training on that or review. We talked about it and I just kind of Lynn, I think you jumped right into, I think there was one at your first meeting. So we kind of turned the fire right into the frying pan. And then with Tim being here, I thought it was a
Oh my
good
God, CSWD was one of your first
Yeah.
meetings? That must have been fun.
I know, I'm like, what did I get myself into?
All right, good. So the 21st, we'll have a project to review, and then we'll sort of, trial by fire in that regard. Then are there other topics? I expect a pretty active, ERF funding, ERF article, ERF legal discussion. I think that will certainly be on the agenda for the 21st. Hopefully we'll have some updates. Cross our fingers in that regard. We'll have a project application. Is there anything else that people want to cover next? Yeah, Reed.
Laura, do you think that we'll be ready to have any conversation about invasive species planning for the next meeting, or what are your thoughts on that?
Let's not plan on it for next
Okay.
meeting, but I will get in touch with Dave for before
Okay.
then.
Maybe
Yeah.
we'll just
Not-
ask for like, what is your time frame? I in the minutes, it sort of reflected that we'd have something.
January,
Well,
Well,
it's spring
yeah, for spring.
for
yeah.
implementation in the spring. So like,
In my mind, then from that future topics list, the things that make sense to me to be working on in January into early February would be like housekeeping stuff, finishing the orientation package, kind of falls on having new members, and we just put together the annual report, or we're putting together the annual report. Getting that out of the way will allow us to focus on business headed into the spring.
So on
Sure.
this list, I put a handful of things that have come up in conversation, and one thing that conversation that eventually I want to queue up for the Conservation Commission, but we haven't gotten into yet. That includes revisiting the turf field discussion, revisiting or really having a discussion about trail resilience that came up when we were talking about active strategy, and a conversation that at some point I want to have about forestry and trails zoning regulations around those. But what I thought would be helpful is this first meeting in the new year is just taking a few minutes to get a sense of, are there other questions that people are hoping to address or be able to take up in the new year? And obviously people bring up new ideas every single month as things change, but
You're
as we
welcome.
close out here, I thought it might be useful to just have kind of an open brainstorm. Anything anyone wants to shout out that
Is there anything else short term, Mr. Maroney, in our town plan items that Conservation Commission is assigned to?
That's a great one. Thank you, Reed. Yeah, I actually think that was on a future topics list at some point. I think fell off. That would be a great thing to do in 2026. We absolutely should do is take a look at the town plan and do a little bit of road mapping for how the WCC should be involved and in taking action on the many priorities that are laid out there.
Yeah, like New Country Parks and Trails is one of our top 20
Mm-hmm.
for the town. I don't know if there's anything we can be doing. I know Chapin raised to me that he's feeling a little bit anxious about the obviously Manahanic, the Tree Island parcel, because he's a little bit concerned that the school, for simplicity purposes, is going to want to take over that parcel from the town, which would potentially remove the opportunity to have an urban park next to the growth center. And for good reasons that the school district might want to do that, but he's feeling like having a more firm plan from the Conservation Commission that, yes, we do want to have a park there, would help the town negotiate with the school about things. So that might be a topic.
That would need to be in the town map, I think, right? I mean, that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
so
yeah. And
Yeah.
let's broadly characterize that as a fresh look at,
new parks and
well,
trails.
I was gonna say, fresh look at the plan
Yeah.
and, all of the next steps that sort of follow from it.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I will just say that personally, my focus is just gonna be on trying to find a resolution to the
Funding.
ERF.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
I'm not gonna have much bandwidth
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah.
Good, thanks for teeing that up, Dave. Any other final or closing comments, before we adjourn? All right,
Welcome, Tim.
welcome, Tim.
Thank you all.
All right, everybody, enjoy the snow. We're adjourned.
All right.
See you
Thanks,
later.
everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Bye.
I'm spoiled. These treats are delicious. I've just had
They're
two.
great.
I'm like